This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
In a world of heroes and monsters, one group of special individuals serve as the shield around our world, protecting us all from mysteries unseen. These are the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Nuff Said. Hello, heroes, and welcome once again to Nuff Said, the Southgate Media Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast. I am your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Hey, Mozz. Welcome once again to Nuff Said. Tonight's episode, Season 6, Episode 6 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Inescapable. Fitz and Simmons have fought through space, time, and alternate realities to find each other, and now, closer than ever, only their own demons can stop their mission. Director Jesse Bochco. I wonder if he's or she is any relation to Stephen Bochco. And of course, we have our writers on this, which of course we have to credit Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Jack the King Kirby, for giving our based on Marvel Comics by credits. Joss Whedon, Jed Whedon, and Marisa Tancharian. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. Get our created by credits. Daniel J. Doyle has the written by credit, here credited as DJ Doyle. And James C. Oliver and Charlotte Oliver are two-fisted, well, four-fisted. Well, actually, I don't know. They might be missing a hand between them. Who knows? But our team executive story editors, always lording it over, the hardest working person in show business this week, our regular story editor, George Kitson. Gotta love George.
He's got a planet named after him, so you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you gotta take it where you can get it. Yes. So tonight's episode, did I do the intro? Fitz and Simmons have fought through space and time and alternate realities to find each other, and now closer than ever, only their own demons can stop their mission. I think I said that. If not, I just said it again. Now, we open up in a plain white room because budgets.
Well, no. In the Matrix, when he's first taken into the Matrix by Morpheus, it's a plain white room, and then it's populated by rows of guns and the TV and the couch. So it's par for the course, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, yes, it is. It is par for the course. This is a nice. It's funny. It's like it's not really I guess it's sort of a bottle episode. Everything's taking place in a very. Yeah, there's really no exterior shot. So, yeah, this is kind of a bottle episode. Everything is in a small group of rooms. Everything is very contained. And it is a budgetary choice they make on shows like this.
I guess, yeah. It could have been like a play, this episode.
Exactly. Oh, speaking of which, Marvel is actually now licensing, like, high school plays.
I love it.
The characters, yeah, honestly. Oh, if only I could have played Volstagg in high school. That is so cool.
Yeah, it'll get a whole new wave of students interested in theater.
Well, yeah, of course, Also, they get to be superheroes.
Yeah, I mean, God.
Who wouldn't want that, man? Anyway, so we have Fitz and Simmons waking up in a plain white room and sort of trying to figure out what's going on. We do get from our... I'm trying to find her name here. Eltara, Sherry Salm, showing up to basically tell them, yeah, you guys need to solve time travel or your brains will fry. And we do see that they are in some sort of weird kind of duo head device that was meant apparently for sharing like thoughts between computers, but like was not really meant for humans to use.
Right. It was the Chronicons used it to communicate with each other.
Yeah, but clearly, so it was one of those great things. Like, wow, how did they even know that would work?
Well, I mean, yeah, I don't think that they did. It was their best shot, and they were taking it. And either they were going to die immediately, or it was going to work.
Well, I mean, like, how did they know that it would even work? Like, it wouldn't like if I plug a USB drive into my ear, it doesn't really do anything, you know?
Right, but we're talking about very, very advanced, creatures that were designed, modeled after us. So their neural pathways have to be sort of like a proxy of what we have, only different and more capable, more powerful. But I think at a base level, like some video game systems like consoles are backwards compatible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. No, and that makes sense. That makes sense. And obviously, it works for the story. I just find it, it's always great when, we have our crazy alien technology and it just works. Although I suppose because we do see that the device to sort of enter people's minds was something that was being used on Earth, because you do see Leopold Fitz, the evil Fitz, use it on Gemma later.
Right,
Which,
but
yeah,
it could have only been the memory of. Well, no, I guess he wasn't aware that he was being put in that machine. That's interesting.
yeah. Oh, no, that's an actual device they use. That's actually sort of, I believe that's when Coulson was in Tahiti.
Ah,
That was
that
like how they put the memories of Tahiti in his brain. Yeah, it's a cool device, but it can also kill you accidentally or on purpose, depending on how you use it. As
what,
oh,
what
yeah,
I thought was interesting about this episode is that this show sort of mirrors the asides it takes that Star Trek: The Next Generation used to take. Like, there's an overarching story, but occasionally there'd be an episode that would just serve the purpose of telling an interesting story or something cool like that. But in this way, like, Fitz and Simmons have been apart for so long and so much has happened, you can't just slap them back together and have them sort of be about the mission. They need a little bit of room to reacquaint themselves with each other and relearn each other in a sense. And this episode gave them a chance to do that. And all the stuff that was pent up, it needed to come out, needed to be said. They needed to see each other again by being honest and vulnerable and seeing all sides of each other. So I thought that was a cool little aside they took to let them have that moment.
yeah. And what's most interesting about this is that for people who watched last season, you know, there was a different Leopold who'd gone to the future and came back, um, who is up to speed on a lot of things that this Leo isn't. You know, Arfit's base. He doesn't know he's a grandfather yet. He doesn't know that he
Hurry.
doesn't know that he went to the future and solved time travel and, you know, did all this stuff. Um, it is interesting to say the least. To say the least. Um, but what I like about what we're seeing in this is that they are essentially in the matrix, and it is kind of like a blank matrix where what they think of they can create,
Mm.
and yeah.
No, it's like they've been given that power
Hmm.
as a tool.
Well, yeah, because they want them to solve time travel without really having any basis to start from, which is what I find like the most fascinating
Ah,
aspect. I mean, they know that the monolith exists, and you do see Fitz recreate the monolith in their mind, the white monolith that travels through time.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and that is interesting in and of itself. What I also find fascinating is that as they're here, Fitz and Simmons are still kind of being cagey with each other. Simmons doesn't want to tell him what happened to his future self that came back in time.
Right.
The fact that it is that basically time is a closed loop, meaning that there can be no paradoxes. As we saw in Avengers, there can be no paradoxes because your timeline is an individual closed loop for yourself. And so, if you go to the future or you go to the past, you are not affecting your own past and future. And for what it's worth, that's actually a super important bit of knowledge that Leo would have to actually solve this time travel question that they're being presented. Although really dealing with all of this stuff, the memories are just very painful for all of them. You know, as in so many cases, I think that if people just sort of sat down and talked about stuff over like coffee, uh, they might actually say, yeah, no, we can totally do that. Why, like, let's go back to Earth. Let's meet with our guys. Let's see what's going on. We got the monolith there. Let's see if we can figure it out. But they're like, no, let's do it now, and we'll rewire your brains to do it. It's like, just sit down, man. We get into this next episode too, and it's like, just can't we all just like stop posturing for a minute and just like sit down and say, okay, where do we have common cause, and how do we solve our problems?
Yeah, it's pretty much like they're, pilgrims and they've planted one crop each and they're refusing to share. It's like crazy.
Well, yeah. I do think in the next episode that there is a reason for Sarge to be Tokechi, but we'll get to that next episode. For the Chronotons, they're just completely socially awkward. And they don't know how to just... It's like, really, if they let Enoch do it, Enoch probably has learned enough of human interactions that he could sit there and, like, they would like to invent time travel. And I think you could assist them. Maybe we should, I think that's part of the problem, is I think that the Chronotons have that difficulty in being creative.
Yeah.
It's your classic,
And they don't fully, completely understand what motivates human beings. To them, they're like Vulcans in that it should just be logic, and they don't understand when other factors come into play in our decision making.
Well, I think it's something that goes a little beyond that, because I do think that this is an inherent problem when you have AI, that they have a hard time creating new things. Like, they can build off of what they already have. And, like, I think that's actually sort of the issue with the, over on the Orville with the, what are they called? Isaac's people. I'm forgetting what they're called right now. But the idea that, everyone says they're such an advanced race, but it might just be that they were created by an advanced race and they have all the tech of that advanced race. But as far as making new tech, they can't think outside of their own boxes. And I think that is, they have, obviously, they have your observers and your warriors and, like, maybe whatever group that Eltrea is supposed to be a part of, but they don't have scientists of their own. They can't, and for what it's worth, that's why they steal the ship, because they don't have a ship.
So that device that was meant for communicating between Chronotons, that was also technology given to them?
I would imagine so. I don't think they can create their own technology. I think that they can work with, they can get technology from other places. They can, because they learn about all the technology in the universe. But they're starting with this very advanced technology. Whoever made the Chronotons, and what their origin story is, who knows? Maybe they are also the victims of the sex apocalypse, as I've always said.
Okay, so hold on. So when Enoch was in the casino, was there ever a point where he encountered a game that he didn't know and was able to learn it? Or do you recall if in that episode he only played the games that he knew of?
No, I think he was able to learn every game. Well, I think he knew every game already.
Oh, all right. So we didn't get a chance to see if he has the ability to pick up something like that or work out problems, because isn't that the whole point of a computer, to take a problem, gather the variables, and figure out a solution?
And for Enoch, not necessarily, because after all, he doesn't know about bluffing. When they're playing their poker variant.
But in that, the main fault in understanding is understanding the motivation of human beings.
Exactly. But that's a very big part of poker,
No, but yeah.
Yeah. Unlike blackjack, which is really just a numbers game.
Right.
You don't bluff in blackjack. I mean, yeah, you don't bluff in blackjack because you actually do see what everybody's cards are. It's like,
Right.
and just getting to 21. Or in this case, where was it, 7 or something? I forget what the number was.
Yeah.
It was some other random number. But yeah, I do think that for the chronoton, is it chronotons or chromatons? I'm never quite sure.
I don't know.
Yeah. But for what they are synthetic beings, and they are open about being synthetic beings. And I do think that they essentially they can learn anything because they do. That's what they do. They go out and they learn stuff and they just record it, because that's their job, to observe the universe. And maybe, interestingly enough, that they do have a warrior class. Maybe they are supposed to this, keep the universe operational. I think it's interesting that when you think about when we first met the chronotons, or not when we first met them, but when we meet the warrior class, it is because Leopold Fitz is dead, and yet there's a Leopold Fitz around, which seems kind of similar to when Sarge is going after the is going after the going after Deke. It's someone who doesn't belong in this
Right.
timeline.
So they're like caretakers of the universe, or created to be such.
Exactly, but it makes me wonder if maybe they were actually supposed to be a defense mechanism against the Shrike. Since both times they got very obsessed with these people who had a time travel anomaly associated with them. Just a theory. We'll see how it plays out.
And they can't be infected by the Shrike, right?
We don't know that yet. Well, actually, we know that their planet was destroyed by the Shrike. At least we assume that. And there's only so many chronotons who were able to escape. Now, they do have systems that mimic biologic things, so it's entirely possible they could become infected by the Shrike. Or there were just other animals on that planet that the Shrike were able to infect and thereby destroy their planet.
Right, because when they do find a host or whatever, when they start shrieking, they turn into this combustible carbon-like substance, right? And then probably they kind of blew up.
Exactly. Yeah, or whatever it does. Well, I think it turns the entire planet into that charred crystalline remains.
Right. And that seems very combustible.
Yeah. So there's a lot about the chronotons that we have to unpack. That I worry we're going to get too much hand wavium on it. They're just going to say, well, don't worry about them.
Yeah, and I dig that because it is that kind of show.
Yeah, I mean, and they could do it because, there are unknowable mysteries in the universe. We're not going to give you all the answers. We're really mostly just concerned about the planet Earth. These are Terran characters defending Terra.
Fitzsimmons.
I'm sorry, what?
And in this episode, we're pretty much only concerned with Fitzsimmons.
Yes, Fitzsimmons. Who, again, like we said, are manipulating each other, are fighting with each other, and not being honest with each other.
Well, it's a process. It's a gradual process. You first have to recognize that there is a discrepancy there, and then you have to decide on whether or not you want to expose it. So they're going through layers of each other. And this is the only, I don't think you can fault them for the way they go about it. I think this is the way naturally human beings would divulge these things, slowly and gradually, step by step, taking their time with hiding and then exposing, and hiding and then knowing that you're hiding and then exposing. So I thought it was a nice way to present how intense, their conversations need to be after so much time apart. And I think it's not a good idea to hide what she's been through from Fitz, because it's a part of who she is. And if she wants to be open and understood by him, he needs to have the whole story. So they needed this process, and I think it unfolded the only way it could have.
Well, yeah, and what I like about it is they both have this hidden dark side.
Yeah.
And that, and this is what this is the idea that I think is the aspect, and it's your classic super genius idea that we all like our super genius superheroes, but because they're super geniuses, as Simmons says to Fitz, you can't conceive of something and not build it. you
Mm.
know. And for what it's worth, this is something that we've seen with Howard Stark in the Agent Carter series, where he talks about his bad babies, where he makes these weapons that are like, oh wow, I created that. That is too dangerous for humankind to have, so I need to lock this stuff away. Uh, you know,
Yeah.
because you do that when you are in that kind of super genius place, is that you think of things and then you build it because I wonder how you do that. Oh, I probably shouldn't have built that.
It's like the famous quote from Dr. Ian Malcolm. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Yes, exactly, and that is sort of what we get with what we see as maybe the core of Fitz and Simmons' relationship is they provide the balance for each other.
Right.
And we see that because, of course, we do see that Simmons has her dark self as well, which was interesting because the first time we see her, I actually thought that was her zombie self from the framework. Because in the framework, Simmons actually dies, and when she enters the framework, she actually has to dig herself out of her shallow grave.
Right.
Because you go into the body that you actually have in that universe, and since she was already dead, she just has to sort of claw her way out.
Recognize, he's not in a special situation. He's not the only one that died. She died too.
Well, yeah, it is the truth of it. Although that was in a computer simulated reality.
Right,
Or
but either way,
alternate reality,
the
perhaps.
emotional experience for each person is probably the same.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, really. But
And
then we.
I thought was really cool about their dark sides was just sort of making that point that if you're gonna get to be in that space with anybody, everybody has a dark side and a good side. Nobody is just one thing, and unless you share that other side of yourself with the other person, and unless the other person accepts your dark side or finds a way to work with it, it's not going to work. So I thought that was a cool little point to make too.
Well, yeah, and of course their dark sides do wind up making out at the end. And that's like how they solve the problem of their dark
Right.
sides.
No, but I mean, like, who didn't see that coming right from the get-go,
Yeah, well, I think it is kind of the thing that you think that's a reality, but again, this also goes into this idea that they are in a make-believe world. That everything that they're encountering is them communicating with each other.
Right, but it's genuine because there's no other interference. This is their true self shining through. There's nothing encumbering them from imagining exactly what they're feeling. So this is the only spot that they could have had, to be honest, because there's nothing pressing except getting to know each other and no other, reflections of themselves around themselves to taint what they present to the other person. This is just who I am.
Yeah, but it does raise a question as to whether or not they actually. I mean, obviously, we knew they were in danger from the machine,
Mm.
but whether or not they were actually in danger from the from themselves, like, or is that just the way the danger from the machine manifested itself? Like, it's because their dark sides are coming out and attacking them.
That's interesting.
That's why the device is acting up.
Yeah, I don't think the machines anticipated that dynamic at all. I think they created it with their own minds because this is what their minds needed in order to be okay with the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was really a brilliantly done episode. I think
I
that.
absolutely loved it, and that's the reason I compared it to like a Next Generation episode, which is, in my opinion, one of maybe the top 5, top 10 best shows ever.
Yeah, well, I mean, Next Generation, it's a classic.
Right.
They really stuck that landing. And I do think Agents of Shield does get to that place every so often as well. I like that. I like that we do run through a complete sort of like a quick primer on the Fitz and Simmons relationship. We see them from all the way back in season 1, where they're being recruited in. We see them We actually see the Darkhold be brought up in this because that's the book that Simmons is actually reading from in her little girl form. I like when we see the little girl form because it just goes to show how if we were just a psychological representation of ourselves, how we might change periodically throughout the story. Because as we let another part of our personality take the dominance and take the lead, we are going to change how we appear to people. And so that was brilliant, and just on every single level, there was just so much going on, so much that they unpacked, so much that was memory and thought and imagination. And then, although, I would have liked if they had actually kind of escaped the inescapable room on their own.
But we did need a little bit of redemption on Enoch's part as well.
Yes, we do need his face to be there, and him betraying his people to save them. Because as they point out, like, look, I don't know if they say, we're fine with being trapped in this world together forever. We're together. And she's like, well, we're going to separate you. And it's like, well, that's not very nice. And again, totally unnecessary. And then, you get the android alarm go off, and we see that somehow Enoch has deactivated all the other chronotons, which I found kind of interesting that he had that ability. And I don't know how he did that, but it helps the story, and so we'll go with that.
I think it's the same way that they did it to him when he was on Kitson. Remember there was that shrieking noise, and then he fell down. So they probably have some sort of failsafe that everybody knows about, like their kryptonite. And he's like, all right, time to, and he'd earn their trust, I guess, by showing them the way the needle fits his mind by using Gemma. But so, it was a little weird, but it was all right.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't necessarily question how he was able to do it. I just, I figure, oh, he hacked the system. But it's just, it was good the way that they ended up. And then they get on the little flexi disc and they travel off to our next episode with letting Fitz know that he is a grandfather, because there's so much to go into. One thing I did want to mention is when Fitz proposes and then he realizes later that wasn't the first time he proposed.
That was beautiful. I really like that moment.
Yeah. But what I think is neat is that it is actually, I believe it actually is the exact same words he used.
Exact same words. Yep.
Yeah. So
that's why she finishes the sentence and surprises him by doing it.
Yeah. But that was beautiful. Oh, okay. Any final thoughts on tonight's episode, Mozz?
No, it was probably my favorite episode I've seen so far.
Yeah, it was a really good episode. I think we can all agree that this is, I think that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. really, it always rises to the task. It always fills us with what we want. Well, not always, but this time it definitely did. I mean, I'm a big nerd on these kind of things, and it does bug me that they are not being tied to the MCU much. Although, if we actually look at the time frame, it's 1 year after the snap, arguably.
Yeah.
There are only a few heroes left. It makes sense that they're not around as much,
Yeah. And it sort of liberates them to tell interesting and cool stories. So it's all right. I don't mind it.
Yeah, I don't mind it at all either. Yeah. So that was Inescapable. We hope you all enjoyed it. If you'd like to talk to me or Mozz, or if you'd like to talk to Mozz specifically about how to escape an inescapable room, Mozz, how can they find you?
They can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email where the way our Mozz and Paz once did, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if I ever am not podcasting at the exact same time, or any number of other things that I might do. at Charlie Esser. That's CHARLIE ESSER. Look for the two E's in the middle.
Equality. Ping.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us here as we recap the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And as we do, after all has been said and done, we just say, enough said.
Enough said.